The sun rose over the college campus, casting a warm glow on the bustling students. Laughter echoed in the corridors. Groups of friends exchanged jokes, and teachers prepared for the day ahead. It seemed like any other morning. But for Armin, everything felt surreal, like he was walking through a dream. His heart pounded in his chest, his fingers trembled slightly, and his vision blurred. He hadn't slept the previous night. His mind was clouded, consumed by rage, regret, and the intoxicating pull of the drugs he had been taking for months. As he walked past groups of students, he heard whispers. Were they talking about him? Laughing at him? His breathing became shallow, his hands clenched into fists. They think I'm weak, a voice inside him hissed. They need to see what I can do. He adjusted his backpack strap, feeling the weight inside, heavy, cold, dangerous. Today would be different. Chapter 2. The Descent into Darkness. A year ago, Arman was just another student with big dreams. He wanted to study engineering, make his mother proud, and build a future. But life had other plans. His father had abandoned them when he was 12, leaving his mother to raise him alone. She worked long hours to keep their home together, often too exhausted to notice the changes in her son. At school, Armin was never the popular kid. He wasn't particularly athletic, nor was he an academic genius. But he had a small circle of friends until things started falling apart. It began with bullying, small taunts at first, mocking his clothes, his shy nature, his inability to fight back. Then, the pushing in hallways, the stolen notebooks, the humiliating pranks. Every day became a nightmare, but when he tried to complain, he was told to toughen up or ignore them. So he found another escape. It started with cigarettes. Then came the pills, offered casually by an older student, a friend who said it would help take the edge off. One pill turned into many, and soon he wasn't just using them to escape. He needed them to function. His grades slipped. His mother grew worried. Teachers noticed his lack of interest, but no one really intervened. They just assumed he was going through a phase. They didn't see the storm brewing inside him. Chapter 3. The Breaking Point. The night before the shooting, Armin's mother confronted him. She had found the drugs in his room, hidden beneath his mattress. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she held up the small plastic bags. "Armin, what is this?" she demanded. He had no answer. For the first time, she raised her voice at him. "You're ruining your life. You're throwing everything away." Something inside him snapped. "You don't understand me," he screamed, his fists clenching. "You never have. You're never home. You don't care." His mother's eyes filled with tears. "I work for you, Armin. I've sacrificed everything for you." But he wasn't listening. In his rage, he grabbed his jacket and stormed out of the house. That night, he didn't go home. Instead, he met up with his so-called friends, the ones who supplied him with drugs, the ones who laughed about his problems but never really cared. One of them, a senior who had been expelled months ago, handed him a gun. "You want to make them listen? Make them afraid?" he whispered. Armin stared at the weapon in his hands, his heartbeat thudding in his ears. Everything in his life had led to this moment. Tomorrow, they would listen. Chapter 4. The shooting morning came, but for Armin, it felt like time had already stopped. His mother was still asleep when he left the house. The campus was alive with energy. Students chatting, teachers calling roll, friends laughing over breakfast. No one noticed when Armin walked through the gates, his backpack heavier than usual. He walked into the main corridor, his heart hammering against his ribs, his fingers curled around the cold metal inside his bag. The voices returned, the whispers, the laughter. He pulled out the gun. The first shot rang out, a scream, a body collapsing, the world around him blurred. Another shot, then another. Panic erupted, students running, ducking, crying. Teachers yelled for everyone to get down. Some froze in fear, others tried to escape. One by one he fired, each bullet fueled by years of pain, rejection, and anger. 15 lives ended that day. Chapter 5. The Aftermath. The sirens came too late. By the time the police stormed the campus, Armin was standing in the middle of the destruction, the gun still in his trembling hands. His face was blank, his mind empty. He had thought this would bring relief, that it would fix everything, but all he felt was nothing. He surrendered without a fight. The news exploded, TV channels flashing his face, headlines screaming, people debating. How did no one see this coming? Who is to blame? Could this have been prevented? His mother collapsed in grief, sobbing into her hands. I should have done more, she whispered. His classmates sat in shock, replaying every conversation they ever had with him, wondering if they had missed a sign. And the parents of the victims, 15 families, were left to mourn their children, their futures stolen in an instant. Chapter 6. A Lesson. Ignored. Armin's trial lasted months. Psychologists testified about his mental state, his history of addiction, the warning signs ignored. Some called him a monster, others called him a victim of a broken system. But in the end, the real question remained. Could this have been stopped? The truth is, there were always signs. The bullying, the drug use, the withdrawal, the anger. Yet, like so many before him, he had fallen through the cracks. Society would mourn, schools would hold vigils, experts would warn about mental health awareness. But time would pass, the world would move on, until the next tragedy, and the cycle would repeat. Final message. This is not just Armin's story. It is the story of countless young people suffering in silence, ignored, misunderstood, abandoned. It is a wake-up call. Before another tragedy unfolds, before another life is lost, are we paying attention?